Our first presentation today is with Duane Sunwold, who's also known as Chef Duane. He is a graduate from the Culinary Arts program at Spokane Community College, where he is now a culinary arts instructor. He has been nominated twice into the Who's Who of Community College Teacher by his students. Duane was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease in 2000. After 18 months of treatment, Duane changed his diet and started seeing significant improvements in his health. Today, Duane has been able to put his kidney disease into remission with the guidance of his medical team and his dietary changes. Because of these results, Duane volunteers for the National Kidney Foundation. His work includes being a past chairman and current member of the Patient Family Council, speaking before congressmen in the Capitol building about kidney disease and healthcare reform, peer-to-peer mentoring with other kidney patients, and is on the National Kidney Foundation's Nutrition Advisory Board. Oh, wow. Chef Duane, thank you so much for being here. It's such an honor to have you.
Thank you. Thank you, Emma. It's an honor to be here. I love talking about food and kidney disease because they're so interrelated. So I think this is really a great topic. So thank you for having me. I would like to go to the next slide. The title here is Beyond the Podium. We got to watch the Great Olympics this summer, and I think kidney patients are unsung heroes that people don't realize how phenomenal they are. So all of the patients out there in the audience today, I want to congratulate you for being here. I also want to thank our medical team because without them, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I have a great deal of respect for the medical team that works with all of us patients. So the next slide will talk about my disclaimer. When I present, I never know what products I'm going to be talking about, but the good news is I don't work for any companies. So any of the products, spices, things we talk about today, I have absolute no affiliation with. So Emma did a great job of kind of introducing my story. I'm going to fill that in with a few more details. I also want to talk about flavor because I think kidney patients deserve flavor. And if we have flavor, we'll probably follow our medical nutrition advice much better. And then I want to talk a little bit about protein because most kidney patients, we have to talk about protein. And then this is a virtual conference. So guess what? We're going to have a virtual cooking demonstration today. And then we're going to end with questions from the audience. So I'd like to start then with my story. So at the next slide, if you look at the top picture, this is what I look like about 6 months after being diagnosed with kidney disease. I was 75 pounds heavier than I am today. I was diagnosed with minimal change disease, and I actually transitioned to FSGS. So while I was being treated for minimal change disease and my high proteinuria, my kidneys were actually decreasing and getting worse as I progressed. So I ended up seeing 5 nephrologists, and only one of them ever talked to me about diet. And this was, 20 years ago, and she said, your kidneys are stressed out. I'd highly recommend you cut back on the animal protein, and we'll see how this goes. At the time, she expected to see a slight improvement in my kidney function. So if you look at my statistics there in 2001, I had a creatinine level of higher than 4.7. I was spilling over 12 grams of protein. And at my worst, my GFR was 13. Now, during this year and a half of treatment, I also have a colleague here on campus who was a clinical dietitian, and she was following my case. And so she walked into my office one morning and she said, I want to do an experiment. I want to take you off of animal protein for 90 days, and let's just see what happens. And I had been sick for a long year, and so I was really ready to do that. And so I had to clarify a few things. So this plant-based diet means no meat, no fish, no chicken, no eggs. Could I have cheese? And she said, no, not at all. So I said, okay, I have the rules. And then she said, with her wisdom, I want you to start Monday morning. And I said, what's so magical about Monday morning? And she goes, I want you to have the weekend to eat what you want. Now, remember, I'm a kidney patient that's 75 pounds overweight. I heard the dietitian say, eat as much as I want. So Friday night, my last weekend of meat, as I looked at it, I was tired. My family wanted pizza for dinner, and I said, great. I'll take care of it. So I ordered 4 large pepperoni pizzas with extra cheese. Now remember, I'm a kidney patient, but I heard the dietitian say in my mind, I could eat what I want. Well, needless to say, at about 2 o'clock in the morning, I was so sick. Oh my gosh. In fact, I was so sick, I didn't eat anything the entire rest of the weekend. And by Sunday, I had realized it was the pizza that had done it to me. So needless to say, Monday morning, I was very motivated to change my diet. I'm a very egotistical chef. I've been around food all my life. This was going to be a piece of cake, and it was not a piece of cake. I didn't think about you have to change an eating pattern that you've had for over 40 years. So it was very challenging. And I will tell you, as a chef, dietitians don't give you much advice. They just tell you, here are the rules. You're creative, you know food, go for it. So I didn't get a lot of advice on how to cook, okay? But what was amazing was when I did this food challenge, within 2 weeks, I actually started feeling better. So over the next year, year and a half, I actually started losing weight. My medication was being reduced, my kidney function was coming up. And by going on this diet, which had the biggest impact on my kidneys, I actually put my kidney disease in remission, and I have been in remission for almost 25 years. So I'm a big, big advocate that food has a huge impact on all of our kidneys. So, and you can see from the bottom picture, in Washington State, we get our driver's license picture every 5 years. The difference going from a plant-based diet to a non-plant-based diet to a plant-based diet. You can see the bottom driver's license picture. One other note, if you can actually see the weight, just to be fair, I lied about my weight in both pictures. So that's how it goes. All right, let's go to the next slide. So let's talk about flavor, because I really believe that if we give kidney patients flavor, they're going to follow the medical nutrition advice that our team gives us. So here's 3 things we can do to help add flavor. Herbs and spices, which I think are really, really crucial. We're going to talk about how you can use acid as a flavor enhancer. And we're also going to talk about how to substitute coconut aminos for soy sauce. So you can also get some Asian flavor, because I know all kidney patients, we all have to watch our sodium intake. So for us, we've got to find ways of adding flavor that are not going to be the typical sprinkle the salt on our food or add salty food items to it. All right, let's go to the next slide. So what we're going to be considering here is how to add flavor without adding salt. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So on herbs and spices, here's some things to keep in mind. If you're afraid of herbs and spices, there's some great stores. Like if you live close to a store like Penzi, they actually let you smell the spices. So that's a great way of learning about them. The other thing is, if you can go to a greenhouse that maybe grows herbs, you can actually smell the plant. And if you like the smell of a plant, that's probably a strong indicator you're going to like the taste of that herb. So I know a lot of people only cook the way their mothers cooked when they were growing up, but there's a whole world of herbs and spices out there that I want you to think about trying and experimenting with. Now, the big thing too is fresh herbs. There's a ratio between fresh herbs and dry herbs. You need 3 times as much fresh herbs to dry. So if you have fresh herbs, you're going to do 3 teaspoons of fresh herbs to 1 teaspoon of if you used a dry herb, okay? Now, the other thing I'd recommend is herbs, the flavor is in the oil. So if you heat the herb up in oil, not just water, so if you have a little bit of oil in your pan and you add your herbs to it right before you add your liquid, that's going to help enhance the flavor of those herbs into the food, okay? And then the other thing, even as a chef, I had to learn this, is you can create your own herb blends, which are really, really fun. Get some spices and seasonings that you like. We're going to talk about some resources here at the end of the presentation. There's some websites out there that I've worked with that actually have, for instance, salt-free taco seasoning blends that you can make yourself and they have no sodium to them. So it's a great way of adding flavor for patients, okay? And then let's talk about the health benefits. Believe it or not, oregano actually is one of the highest foods for antioxidants. So as you watch commercials and they talk about antioxidants being good for us, for everybody, actually oregano is one that is a superfood when it comes to that. So there are actually benefits. And what's really cool is science is coming into the kitchen at this point in our world now, and they're doing a ton of research on what are those health benefits for herbs. All right, next slide. Okay, so I love Asian food, but Asian food has a tendency to be very, very salty. So how can we lower the sodium and keep that great Asian flavors? Because it's such bright flavors. So one thing to do is substitute coconut aminos for soy sauce, okay? And also don't be, it's almost false advertising in the fact that they say light soy sauce. Light soy sauce still has a ton of sodium in it. It just means it's less sodium than regular soy sauce, okay? There's also a couple other ways of adding great Asian flavor. I like ginger, so you can add either fresh ginger or dried ginger to your dish. And another thing you can do is you can actually get tamari. Tamari is the liquid that they pour off of fermenting soybeans. And you can actually get low sodium tamari sauce. It's usually very dark, so it helps add kind of a darker color to your dish as well. And then one of my last tricks that I love for Asian cooking is sesame oil. It's a very, very strong flavored oil. You don't need a lot to get that great flavor in your food. So you're not adding a lot of fat, but you're adding a ton of flavor, and you're not adding any extra sodium to your dish. So those are a couple ways that we can add Asian flavor back to our foods. Use coconut aminos, ginger, sesame oil are all great resources to add flavor without adding salt. The next slide, please. Now, let's talk protein, okay? For me, my body and my kidneys really appreciate plant-based proteins. So let's talk about proteins for a little bit here. So a lot of people get their nutritional education through 60-second commercials. So I know protein's a big thing that commercials seem to be promoting. And we all need protein. It's a building block for our cells. And protein is made up of what we call amino acids. And there are 20 amino acids that our body uses. Of those 20, there's only 9, which we call essential amino acids. So those 9 essential amino acids are what we have to eat. Our body cannot make them. The other 11 amino acids, our body can actually make those for us as our body needs them. So when they look at animal protein is considered a very high quality protein. And the reason for that is because it has a lot of those essential amino acids, okay? But what's interesting is those 9 essential amino acids that we need, they're in plants as well as animals, okay? So what research is showing now is they want to compare the difference between animal protein and plant protein. And animal protein has a lot of those essential amino acids. Animal protein is also more acidic than plant protein. So part of our kidney function is to help, neutralize our bloodstream. So if we eat a lot of animal protein, our kidneys have to try to balance out that high acidity, okay? And the other thing about animal protein is that it's a lot less fiber than plant protein, okay? So the advantages to plant protein are they have the same essential amino acids. You may have to eat combinations of food or make sure that you eat 2 types of different foods over 2 days so that you get all those essential amino acids. It's also more alkaline, meaning it's not as acidic going into our bloodstream, okay? And plant protein also is higher in fiber. So there's a lot of research going on right now about how healthy fiber is really good for our digestive tract, as well as helping us with inflammation. All right, so the next slide. So plant protein sources. People don't realize this, but there is protein in a lot of different plants. So a couple ways we can look at this. We can look at legumes, which are beans, chickpeas, lentils, soybeans, okay? They're a great source of protein. They're a great source of fiber. I realize beans can have an additional side effect, but what's interesting is after doing some research, I learned that if you take dried beans and you bring them to a boil and let that turn the heat off and let that set for 5 minutes, you let that water cool down, and then you can leave those beans refrigerated in water overnight, or you can start cooking either way. But the idea here is that if you cook them for 5 minutes, turn it off and let them cool down, it reduces about 90% of that gassy part that beans can cause for some people. So it's a great way of lowering the gases, as we call it, but it's also a way that you don't have to add more sodium when you're cooking them. So legumes, great source of protein. Also, people don't realize sometimes that nuts and seeds are a great source of protein. If you are not allergic to nuts or seeds, almonds, cashews, peanuts, sunflower seeds are excellent sources. Chia seed are also an excellent protein source, okay? Chia seeds also have the omega-3s, which are good for us, okay? And then actual vegetables have protein, and people don't think about that sometimes, but portobello mushrooms, you know, those big mushroom caps, they actually have 8 grams of protein per mushroom cap. Green peas have protein in them. Broccoli actually has a couple grams of protein. Cauliflower has a couple grams of protein per cup. So people don't think vegetables give you protein, but they actually do, okay? And then another great source of protein can be grains, whole grains, the whole kernel. So quinoa, which is one of the ancient grains from Central America, is one of the few grains that has a very high content of all those essential amino acids. So quinoa is another great source for protein. Wheat gluten is almost pure protein. So if people can eat gluten, I recommend wheat gluten as a protein source. It's very low in potassium and phosphorus. But I have also been reading where you do need to check with your medical team, because some types of kidney disease, they are not recommending wheat gluten for some types of kidney patients. So, all right, the next slide. So the high hurdle, I think the highest hurdle when it comes to diet is diabetic kidney disease. And I have talked to lots of patients who are very frustrated because the doctor who takes care of diabetes tells them to eat one way, their nephrologist tells them to eat a different way, and the poor patient feels like there's no choices. Well, it does take a little bit of work, but trust me, you can do this successfully, okay? So a couple things here. If you are a diabetic kidney disease patient, think about vegetables. They're fairly low in carbohydrates. Now, we're not talking starchy vegetables like potatoes. I'm talking the colorful vegetables like broccoli, peppers, peas, carrots. Vegetables that are highly colorful usually have a low carbohydrate count. They also, they've done research on food, which is the glycemic index. And the glycemic index tracks how fast foods cause our blood sugar to spike. So vegetables have this low glycemic index, okay? Remember, there is protein in those vegetables. There's a lot of variety, and there's a lot of color that you can do with that, okay? Now, complex carbohydrates, they take longer to digest, okay? And complex carbohydrates are the whole grain. Whole grains mean that whole kernel like if we had a kernel of wheat, we would grind up the whole kernel, not just the starchy part, okay? So complex carbs are also a great source of protein, okay? And if you mix like whole grains and nuts together, you get all of those essential amino acids. So I kind of remember that by the peanut butter sandwich. If I have whole grain bread and I have peanut butter on that sandwich, then I know I'm getting all my essential amino acids, okay? Now, we have healthy fats and unhealthy fats. The rule of thumb is you can look at them at room temperature. Unhealthy fats at room temperature are usually solid fats. So that means butter, lard, okay? And the fats that are liquid at room temperature are usually healthy. So olive oil, avocado oil, nut oils are a healthier fat. So I know that all of us, like all Americans, we probably eat too much fat. So we do need to monitor how much fat we eat and what type of fat we eat. All right, next slide. So we're going to actually get to the cooking videos here. The first one, I want to just talk about the top one for a minute. The vegan African peanut stew doesn't have a video, but it is at the National Kidney Foundation's website. And it's a great recipe. And the reason I want to tell you about this recipe is because I make it all winter. And what I do is I make a pot of it, and then I pour it out into 1 cup freezer bags, and I freeze it. So if those busy nights, like for me, work nights are busy. I don't have a lot. Even I cook all day. I don't want to come home and cook at night. So I just pop one of those take one out of the freezer, put them in the microwave, and I have dinner made. So it's an incredibly flavorful stew that has a low sodium count. All right, so let's go to the video. We're going to start with the Mediterranean chickpea salad. So let's actually do a cooking demo here. I decided to make a Mediterranean chickpea salad with all the emphasis on how healthy the Mediterranean diet is. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take some chickpeas. These are low sodium canned chickpeas. You can also decrease the sodium even more by rinsing them under cold water or opening the can, putting them in some fresh water and putting them in your fridge overnight. That will also reduce the sodium in the chickpeas. We're going to add 1 diced tomato, 1 diced cucumber. We have some chopped up fresh mint. Chopped fresh parsley. A little bit of diced red onion. And then what we're going to add is some lemon juice, olive oil, a little bit of garlic. It's Mediterranean, so we have to add a little garlic. And then we have some dried oregano. And what you want to do is you want to mix this up, make sure that all these vegetables are covered with the olive oil, lemon juice. The herbs are equally distributed in this salad. And this salad really tastes good if you can make it a couple hours or a day ahead and put it in your refrigerator. So all these great Mediterranean flavors are going to meld together. All right, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of fresh parsley to the side as a garnish. And there you go. You have your chickpea Mediterranean salad with all those great Mediterranean flavors.
So
one thing I want to talk to you about on those chickpeas, if you use the canned chickpeas, you can drain them and rinse them. That's also going to lower the sodium count in them. Something we do in restaurants is we buy big cans of chickpeas and we don't use them all in one serving. So we actually take the canned chickpeas, drain them, put them into a plastic container, and we cover them with fresh water and then put them in the refrigerator. What I didn't realize years before I got kidney disease, this is actually a great way of also lowering the sodium. So you can lower the sodium in canned beans by rinsing them, putting them into containers, cover them with fresh water, and then put them on the fridge overnight. This is going to help kind of extract out some of that extra salt. So, all right, so the next recipe we're going to do is the spicy roasted cauliflower tacos with cilantro cream sauce.
So we're going to do a spicy roasted cauliflower taco. I actually had a dish similar to this when I was traveling in Colorado, and it was so flavorful. So I thought, why not make a roasted cauliflower taco that is kidney friendly? So what we have here in the bowl is I have some florets of cauliflower. We have put on some paprika, chili powder, okay, a little bit of taco seasoning, and some olive oil. And what we want to do is we just want to mix this all up and make sure that the cauliflower has a little bit of oil on it and that all of those spices and herbs are well blended over and through the cauliflower. So you'll see it's all nice and pink from the paprika. Now what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of olive oil to my sheet pan. Like you, I don't like to do dishes, so I want to make it as easy as possible. So I just spread that olive oil on my sheet pan. This is going to make cleanup so much easier. And then we're going to add our cauliflower. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that it's a single layer of cauliflower. You don't want it doubled up while it's roasting. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this in the oven about 375, 400 degrees for about 30, 35 minutes till the cauliflower is tender and it starts to turn brown. All right, so while our cauliflower is roasting in the oven, we're going to make a cilantro lime cream sauce to go over the top of our tacos. So what we're starting with is the plant-based yogurt. It's unsweetened, doesn't have any vanilla or flavoring to it, so it's a great substitute for sour cream. We have some chopped cilantro. Lime juice, and some zest of a lime. And you just want to whisk that together. It's going to be this gorgeous white and green sauce. A little bit of garlic powder. This is going to help give it a little more in-depth flavor. I like to let that set for about 5 minutes for those flavors to meld together, and then it's ready to be put on top of our tacos. So our roasted cauliflower is nice and tender. You'll see that it started to turn a little brown, so we're ready to make our tacos. So I have 2 corn tortillas, and we're going to make these into street tacos. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add some of our cauliflower. It's nice and tender to our tacos. We're going to add those to our tortilla shells. And the other thing I like about using tortilla shells, they help us with our portion size. And then what you want to do is take some of that cilantro lime cream sauce we made and just drizzle that right over the top of our roasted cauliflower. And what this is going to do is help brighten up this flavor and combine all these Mexican flavors together. And there you go, you have some roasted cauliflower spicy tacos with a cilantro lime cream sauce.
So cauliflower has become a really popular vegetable right now, and it actually can be used for a lot of different flavors. So this same technique of roasting cauliflower, you can do it if you like buffalo wings. You can use that spicy buffalo seasoning and roast cauliflower so you get that really hot flavor. If you like curry, curry is a wonderful flavor that roasts well on cauliflower. So be creative. I love using vegetables. I think cooking with vegetables is a much more creative way of cooking than actually cooking with meat. So, all right, the next slide. So I promised you some resources. So here are some other resources for you. These two videos are from the National Kidney Foundation. And so I have developed some recipes for them. So that address is kidney.org. I also work here locally. I'm from Washington State. So the Puget Sound Kidney Center over on the coast, they have some great recipes and some videos I've done for them. So that's another resource for you. And now let's talk about spice companies. So here in Spokane, we actually have a local spice company that is it's national, and it's called Spiceology. And patients, if you don't find this in your stores, you can go to their website, spiceology.com. And what's interesting about Spiceology is that right before the pandemic hit, I started working with them on coming up with some salt-free herb blends. And this is a spice company that was geared to work with restaurants. And then the pandemic hit and the restaurant business dropped off for about 2 years. So they were very, very motivated to work with patients. So Spiceology has come up with about 18 different salt-free herb blends. And they're very, very unique herb blends. Like they have a loaded baked potato that has no salt, but it has all the flavors we would add to a baked potato. They have a taco seasoning. They have a seasoning blend called Tandoori Glory, which is their version of a curry, but it's also got garlic and other ginger and other flavors into it. So it's also really, really good. I also asked Spiceology. Obviously, I like pizza and I miss pizza. So Spiceology has come up with a pizza seasoning. And I've actually used this pizza seasoning in restaurants when we've used it to flavor our pizza sauce, and not one customer ever complained that it was low sodium. So Spiceology is a great resource for very, very creative things. They also have like an everything bagel flavoring that has no salt. So you might want to check out that website. Penzeys, love this store. I only have one, but it's 300 miles away. So if you live anywhere close to Penzeys, or you can get on their website, Penzeys is a great store for spices and herbs because, like I said, if you get to the store, they actually let you smell their herbs and spices. And Penzeys has a couple of salt-free herb blends as well. And one of their herb blends is designed for meat, but it's wonderful on vegetables. So be creative when you're looking at these kind of flavors. Now, McCormick, obviously the big spice company in the United States. Everybody in every grocery store, I swear, has McCormick spices. They also have some salt-free herb blends. And then there's another company called Spice Hunter, and Spice Hunter has about 20-some salt-free herb blends. And what I like about Spice Hunter is almost all of their herb blends are ethnic cuisine flavors. So they do a Szechuan salt-free blend. They have a Mediterranean blend that's salt-free. They do a garlic herb one that's amazing on vegetables if you want to roast off a medley of vegetables. So that's another great resource for you as well. Okay, because like I said, I truly, truly believe that if we give patients flavor, we're all going to follow our medical nutritional guidelines better. So, all right, so there's some tricks and tips I've given you for this morning or this afternoon. Sorry, we're doing this right after lunch. So, but I now would like to open it up for questions to see. This is your chance as kidney patients, medical professionals, this is your chance to ask the chef.
Thank you so much, Chef Duane. We did have quite a few questions come through. We'll keep watching the chat, but I'm going to read off some that we received earlier in your presentation. So in regards to vegetables as protein, there were two questions. Is it true that it is easier to digest vegetables that we are using for protein? And there was some concern about the phosphorus and potassium levels.
Okay, so the first question, obviously cooked vegetables are easier to digest than raw vegetables. So if that is a problem for someone, I always say I recommend cooking them. What we do in restaurants also is what we call blanch and chill vegetables. So I will take fresh broccoli and you put it in boiling water, it comes back to a boil, and then I take the broccoli out and cool it off in ice, and I get an ice bath. And what this does is it stops the cooking, it keeps that bright, beautiful color, and then I have a partially cooked vegetable that I can use in salads, or I can finish cooking it later in the week when I want it with my dinner. So it's another great cooking technique, okay? Now, potassium and phosphorus, this is a real interesting thing because I work with several nephrologists who are really questioning the fact that shouldn't kidney patients eat a healthy diet? And one thing to keep in mind is that when it comes to potassium, our bodies don't absorb 100% of the potassium or 100% of the phosphorus that's in plants. And part of that is due to the cell structure of the plant. Our digestive tract doesn't break that down. So even though a food may be fairly high, that doesn't mean our body will absorb all of those minerals. So there's been interesting discussions among the medical community about let's give kidney patients a healthier diet. They will say, even the doctors that promote fruits and vegetables for all kidney patients will tell you, you probably want to stay away from tomato sauce if you're having to watch your mineral count. And the reason for that is because there's so many tomatoes in a tomato sauce. So tomato sauce is one of those exceptions where it's pretty well heavily concentrated. And so for that reason, I would say you probably want to avoid tomato sauce. But other vegetables, there are some nephrologists that are recommending that diet to their patients. All right, next question.
Wonderful. I see one that just came in. This individual has families that do not include vegetables in their diet besides potatoes. What would be a good vegetable to recommend, cooked or raw, so they can start introducing plants in their diets?
That's interesting. I've actually worked with childcare centers, and to introduce a child and get a child to eat vegetables per se, we have to introduce and work with them anywhere from 8 to 12 times. Now, that doesn't mean you have to make the dish 12 times before they start eating it. You can talk about it. That's one way. You can give them a little taste. I also sometimes suggest, if family members are against vegetables, ask their input and see what they recommend and think about how can we do this. I really do like using salt-free meat flavorings on vegetables. And it's amazing how people will transition more quickly to vegetables for that reason. For myself, when I was transitioning off of a meat diet to a plant-based diet, I was craving cheeseburgers. Oh my gosh, I was awful. It was horrible. So I would buy a cheeseburger and I would take 2 bites, and then I would throw the actual meat out, and then I would eat the rest, the bun, the lettuce, the tomato. And I started realizing I really enjoyed the condiments on a hamburger more than the actual meat. And people don't realize that. So that's another great way of doing it. The other thing is, salads are a great way of introducing a vegetable. So be creative. I love a broccoli salad. There's some incredible curried cauliflower salads out there. So just start slow and don't give up. That's probably my best advice to you when it comes to vegetables. So One other thing, I have a good friend who's a chef who is diabetic, and he can eat sweet potatoes, but he can't eat white potatoes. White potatoes cause a very high blood sugar spike. So he's really an advocate about even, roasting off sweet potatoes and throwing them into a salad because they have such incredible flavor and color. So that's another technique.
Wonderful, thank you. There has been some chatter about cost for produce. And to add to that, a discussion around organic versus non-organic. Is there a difference when it comes to produce?
Okay, so first we'll take the last question first. So yes, there is a difference between organic and inorganic. Organic vegetables are to be grown without pesticides and herbicides. So they can be healthier for you and not have as many of that residual herbicide pesticides on them. Organic can be more expensive. One thing I would suggest is if you have any local organic farmers around your area or farmers markets, try shopping there. Because as you get to know the people who grow the food, they also can tell you when is the best time to buy. So when it comes to cost, vegetables, fruits and vegetables that are in season are going to be at their highest quality and their lowest price. So if you eat with the seasons, you actually can save yourself some money. The other thing that I do, I play this little mental game with myself, is in the grocery store, I love going to the produce section because I have such variety of what am I going to make for dinner tonight. But I also, in my grocery store, I have to walk by the meat counter. So when I walk by the meat counter, I tell myself, cha-ching, I'm not having to pay for meat. So I may pay a little more for vegetables, but I'm not having to pay for that really expensive protein that most people eat. So when you look at this, and it over time, you can save some money by going to a more plant-based diet. The other thing people don't realize, frozen vegetables that haven't been seasoned are fairly inexpensive. Even though I know food prices have gone up, frozen vegetables are a great resource for people who want to increase their plant consumption.
Wonderful, thank you. Going back to your comment about craving a cheeseburger, was there anything else that you felt like you were missing in your diet when you went to plant-based?
Today I actually love my diet. I do not feel that I am deprived in any way. When I started, it was much tougher than I had anticipated. I admit I was a very egotistical chef. I've been around food. This is going to be so easy. It was not easy because everything I was used to cooking had meat in it. So for me, one of the turning points was when I realized I could eat at a Mexican restaurant. I could eat beans and rice and eat a fairly normal meal like everyone else. And that made me feel comfortable. So once I realized that I'm making substitutions, but I have a lot of choices with those substitutions. So I find a lot of ethnic cuisines are much healthier than the typical American diet. So for me, I get a lot more creativity. Now, as a chef, I had to learn to cook differently, which was pretty exciting. At my point in my career, I'm like, this is a whole new cuisine. This is amazing. But I have to tell you, the first couple times I cooked tofu, it was awful. My family wouldn't eat it. The dog wouldn't eat it. It was bad. I had to learn the hard way.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that because even as a chef, it took some time to get into a groove and start to find, change your palate a little bit. So appreciate you sharing that. Along that same line, you mentioned going out to eat. So do you have any tips and tricks when folks have to go out to eat or want to go out to eat, how to best make choices?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, I do. There's a couple things. First of all, if you know ahead of time you're going to a restaurant, call the restaurant. Tell them your dietary guidelines. Chefs are very, very creative individuals, but they aren't all educated in cooking for kidney patients. So you want to be aware of that. But if a chef has the time, they really want to please a customer. And if you're going to be a repeat customer, they're going to learn how to cook for you because restaurants survive on repeat customers. So I always say, educate the kitchen prior to coming to the restaurant if you can. Now, I travel a lot, so that doesn't always work, and I get that. As a kidney patient, I carry a small laminated card that explains my diet so that the kitchen or the person making my food will understand why I need to eat this way and what they can work with. So if I tell a cook that I'm low sodium vegan, they still may not understand that. So I explain to them no added salt, and then I give them some suggestions like possibly a rice dish, a whole grain dish, lots of vegetables. Forget that, you don't have to put a piece of meat on my plate. And I've been really, really impressed with that. Now, the other technique I do when I go out to eat is I look at a menu and I look at everything on that menu, even the side dishes, as kind of a pantry. And I kind of pick and choose. And sometimes I will say, here's my dietary constraints. Can you take these 4 side dishes from different entrees and make them a plate? Now, one piece of advice I will give you, ask the price before you say yes, because sometimes I've paid a lot of money for a plate of vegetables when I'm thinking, I know how much those vegetables cost. So ask them if you can kind of pick and choose and create a plate, and then also be sure and ask them, what will they be charging for that? But probably 99% of the restaurants I've been in, I've been able to eat and maintain my diet by using those 2 techniques of pick and choosing through the menu or letting the chef know ahead of time, and they actually make something special for you.
Thank you. I love the idea also of having something like physically written down to share with the staff, because that's, like you said, vegan can mean something different to everyone. So having very concrete examples is wonderful. One other question that came through, or from your standpoint, where do you feel is the easiest place to start when trying to make a change in diet, whether it's to go completely plant-based or any other change?
Well, obviously, I talk a lot about plant-based, so let's talk about plant-based first. If you are going to increase the amount of plants in your diet, I would suggest you start with breakfast. Because if you think about a typical American breakfast, without the eggs and bacon, it's pretty much plant-based. So if you're used to eating a cereal, a whole grain breakfast, that is a great place to start, okay? And I'm in restaurants, we work with numbers, so we eat 7 meals. We eat 7 days a week, 3 meals a day, so there's 21 meals in a week. So I kind of track how am I doing on that. So for me, I will tell you, I converted to oatmeal for breakfast a bulk of my time. I'm not a big fan of oatmeal. It's pretty bland, but I've learned to make oatmeal taste amazingly well. And by doing that, I will cook off a bowl of oatmeal, and then I will put a scoop of peanut butter in it. So I'm adding a protein source, I'm adding that nuts, that healthy fats, and then I'm going to do a seasoning blend. I like cinnamon and peanut butter together. Most people don't think about that. We're into fall, pumpkin spice is real popular. I have met people who love pumpkin spice in their oatmeal. It gives it a different depth of dimension for flavor. So I always say start with breakfast. If you're doing pretty well on breakfast, then I would suggest go to dinner and slowly start changing your dinner. So for me, I didn't I still had meat cravings those first few weeks that I changed my diet. So I learned to shrink the portion of meat really, really small. But as I shrink the portion of the meat, I expand the amount of vegetables on my plate. So I'm still having a lot of food, but I'm just eating in different portion amounts, okay? I know a lot of places they're promoting, meatless Monday. So that's another way of going about this is you can pick one night a week and try to do your diet. What I like about cooking for my diet now is what I make for dinner, I have leftovers for lunch the next day. So it's a way for me to keep following that medical nutrition advice I've been given. So if I make dinners and plan out the week for my meal planning, I know that I will be more likely to follow what I'm supposed to be eating. Now, let's talk snacks because we're gonna get hungry between those meals. So you have to plan on that. So I always try to plan to have some kind of healthy snack, whether it's mid-morning, mid-afternoon. I always try to make sure that there's a healthy snack for me. And sometimes it could be just as simple as some fresh fruit, maybe, a few almonds. So it doesn't take much to fill up that craving for a snack, but you've got to plan and have the food you're supposed to be eating for when that happens.
Love that. Planning ahead and being prepared. That's great. There is a comment in the chat in regards to the water content of veggies. There's been discussion around that to the point that some patients will not eat them. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, I do realize, dialysis patients have to watch their fluid intake. So you do have to kind of keep track. You do need to keep track of that. I'm a big advocate for roasting vegetables. I love the flavor of roasted vegetables. So that is a great way of cooking vegetables without adding any more liquid to them. So, and roasting vegetables are very simple. You make sure that you have a very, very thin coating of oil on them. And then you can, as in the video with the cauliflower, you can add any kind of seasoning you like. And then make sure they're a single layer, put them in the oven. And a lot of vegetables, about every 15, 20 minutes, you want to go in and stir them and rotate them so they brown and get caramelized equally. But roasted vegetables are a great way of adding flavor without adding a lot of liquid.
Great, thank you. Any tips and tricks on how to best store veggies so they last longer?
Well, yes. You want to make sure that your vegetables are kept in a cool place, whether it's refrigerated. Some vegetables like sweet potatoes, they don't need to be refrigerated, but they need to be in a dark, cool place. Believe it or not, before refrigeration, most of society kept vegetables in what they called root cellars, which are about 55 degrees. So a lot of vegetables will last a really long time at about 55-degree temperature. So the thing that most people make the mistake in is that we pick up our vegetables and we put them in a plastic bag. That plastic bag prevents air from getting around the vegetable. And that's what actually increases and speeds up the deterioration process. So now, I don't like wasting food any more than anybody else, but I don't eat everything in my refrigerator. So if I have vegetables that are limping, like I have celery that's kind of it's not standing up anymore. It's had its best day. I will throw celery, onions, some carrots, and then most other, not strong vegetables, but what other vegetables I might have. And I will make a stock out of them. And that way I'm extracting the flavor before I have to throw those vegetables out. And I just take the stock, put it in 1 cup freezer bags and freeze it. So if I need to do a stir fry and I need some vegetable stock, I could just pull that out, literally frozen, and throw it into my wok. It doesn't take any time to thaw out. You can cook with it frozen.
I love that. Thank you. Some good time-saving tricks there. Well, we have lots of comments of people so excited to try out your recipes that you shared. Corey shared his killer oatmeal recipe that had peanut butter and cinnamon in it as well. Folks just very grateful to know where your cooking demonstrations are, finding those extremely valuable. This has been such a great conversation starter. Is there anything else that you would like to share, Chef Duane?
You know, I think, you know, first talk to your medical team if you're going to make any major dietary changes. That's very important. I love the fact that research is now showing a plant-based diet is better for our kidneys. And with more research, we're learning more and more every day. I do know it's going to be challenging. I do know the patients, probably obviously as a chef, the #1 complaint I hear from kidney patients are their diet. They don't like it. You know, fate, I just believe fate put me here for a reason, and I would not have learned the kidney diet had I not been a kidney patient. And for me, it's been the first time I actually saw where the culinary field and the dietary field are coming together, and that's what we've needed for a long time. If you give patients flavor, I think we'll comply. That's really important. And I can tell you, everyone, doesn't matter where you live, we all need to learn to make healthy choices, whether we have kidney disease or not. So what we're talking about today, it applies to everybody. So even if a patient doesn't feel normal, you're dealing with the same normality that everyone has. And I think the best way to make healthy choices is through education. We just all have to learn how best to do it. But I can tell you, going from an animal-based diet to a plant-based diet, I am so happy. I feel so much better. My kidneys are happier, and I do not feel deprived, which I think is the true success of a good diet.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chef Duane. I see here we have your contact information. Appreciate you providing that to our attendees. So many fans in the chat, just so grateful for the information you have provided. We thank you so much for being here today. It's such a pleasure to see your face and hear your experiences. Yeah, we are just so thank you. So appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank the audience. I appreciate you all being here today.